Hello! Welcome to the Sulk stream. I'm not feeling well, but I'm here anyway. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it with you guys. Everyone's getting sick. I think I got sick again. I was sick like a week ago. Sick again. That's my life, right? It just hits you, man. It just absolutely hits you. So, we're gonna do something chill tonight. I don't think I have the gusto, the energy, but we'll see. Maybe I'll muster it up. Maybe I'll bring it from the depths of my soul and try to do my best. I always do. I always try to bring whatever I have, but I just feel like tonight it's not going to be enough. But I have surprised myself before, so maybe this is one of those nights. Tonight we're doing a little documentary on, God, what is it, an Argentinian football team? Soccer team, whatever you want to call it. They crashed in the Andes and they started eating each other, so I thought this would be nice and cheery and light. And I was like, yeah, this seems like my people would enjoy this, so this is what I'm going to do. This is how I'm going to do it. Anyways, get comfy and cozy. Grab yourself a nice in-flight cocktail. You know, the pilots sure did. If you're working, keep working. If you're driving, drive home safely and hit the like button. I'm the Incredible Sulk. This is the Sulk stream. This is called They Never Thought Anyone Would See This Photo. Enjoy. Enjoy!
We all have a few treasured holiday stamps lying around at home. But I'm willing to place a large wager that not a single person watching this video has anything quite...
Could just play the movie. Could what? This movie? Alive? I would play the movie. I like that movie. I think that's a good movie.
Like this one. Or at least, I hope not.
But I think I get popped for copyright. I'm sure I would.
At first glance, it might look like a fairly standard shot of a group of friends hanging out in the snow. But if we zoom out just a touch, you might notice something a little odd.
All right, we just ate a bunch of people. Smile. Look, this guy's the only one who'd been like, dude, I can't believe I ate his dick. You ate his dick? You didn't have to eat his dick. There's butt cheeks and there's thigh and like you can nibble on ears and shit. You ate his dick and like there was other parts already available, right? You were the first in line at the buffet. You're like, dibs on dick. Didn't even cook it. Didn't even put it on a stick and put it over fire. Just snapped it raw, dude. Raw dogging, I call it. Yeah, it's raw dogging Ronnie right there. He's going to live with that. Live with that title the rest of his life. You didn't have to eat the dick, dude. You didn't have to eat the dick. You didn't have to call dibs either because nobody else was into it. Nobody else was into it. All right? They're like, you have that dick. And he ate all the dicks. All of them. Ate all the dicks. Somebody, legitimately somebody had to. Somebody had to do it. Guarantee you.
And when I say odd, what I really mean is that you might spot the human spinal column lying in the snow, right?
Raw dog and Ronnie over here.
That's a pretty good indicator that this isn't your average holiday photo.
Our internet, sorry. The internet, that's why I dropped off Daywave, because my internet fucking dropped off. So I'm here as long as I'm here for it. And I'm fucking sick. I got another cold. So like, fucking things are looking up for me. I'm sorry, I don't feel good. Back to the wiener eating. I know that's what you guys are here for.
But in that case, what the hell is it? Evidence.
You come to the Sulk stream, you're like, you know what? I feel like gobbling some dick tonight. Let's go see what John's doing. I know you're kind. I know your type. I see you. I see you. Right there. Looking at you. All of you. I'm not gonna name a single person. Renazed.
Of a mountainous cannibal cult, a lad's trip abroad gone horribly wrong, the aftermath of a tragic accident. In a way, it's kind of all free. The young men in this picture were amongst the survivors of a plane crash in the Andes 50 years ago. After somehow walking away from the crash in one piece, they found themselves stranded.
Because they crashed into snow, man. Snow, you can jump off a building into snow. Look, I understand it's a plane crash, but he's like, somehow they miraculously survived. He landed in a snowbank. It's not that bad. It's not that bad.
In one of the harshest environments on planet Earth. There was nothing to eat.
Background noise says, I feel like dick would just be empty calories. No, man, there's like protein. I mean, like, a man can't live on dick alone.
No shelter,
you know? But it's part of a balanced breakfast.
As far as the eye
Great.
could see. With nighttime temperatures hitting
I already hate
-40
this show.
Celsius, staying alive wasn't just challenging, it should have been literally impossible.
Honey, if you're watching this, I'm going to need more
This
fluids.
photo was taken almost 2 full months after the accident. So,
I mean, to be stuck on top of a mountain for 2 months just eating dudes, it would suck. Look, I'm here to make fun of it. So, like, I mean, that's the definition of irreverent. But let's agree that would suck.
how on earth did these men survive?
Okay.
As you've probably already guessed, the bloody spinal column in the corner of the picture is a bit of a...
Dan Snot says bull penis is a delicacy in some places. Oh, so you have some dude fuck your wife and then you eat his cock. I get it. Is that what you're into, Dan?
hint. But the tale I'm going to tell in this video
what you're saying?
is about much more than cannibalism. In fact, it may just be the single most incredible feat of human survival I've ever come across. This is the true story of the loss of Uruguayan Air Force Flight 571 and of the remarkable people who lived to tell the tale.
It was a good movie. Alive was a good movie. I enjoyed it. Ethan Hawke was in it.
Tucked away
Christian
on the outskirts of the
Bale?
Uruguayan capital Montevideo is a rugby club known as the Old Christians. These days, it's one of the most
it's
successful rugby
rugby.
teams in the whole...
Well, dude, I mean, like, they're solid ass dudes. Like, right, like, they're not like soccer players who are like thin and stuff. Rugby players they're thick dudes. They're muscular dudes. I could just see them surviving a plane crash more than that. And don't even be like, that's the gayest thing you've said on this show, John, because it's definitely not.
whole of Uruguay. But written into the club's history is a tale of survival so
Pearl
outrageous,
Jam did the
it
soundtrack?
makes
I
Bear
believe
Grylls
that.
look like
I
my
believe
nan
that.
trying to get home from the pub after one too many sherry.
By the way, do you know what Pearl Jam means? I know it's a band, but apparently he named the band after, I guess he had like his grandmother was named Pearl, and she used to make a jam with mushrooms in it that would make you trip balls. And so her name was like Pearl, so they called it Pearl Jam. Which is pretty cool. You got a cool grandma.
It all started in the spring of 1971.
Not everything's come, Dan.
When the Old Christians went on a tour.
Not
of Chile
everything
to
has
play
come,
against several local
okay?
teams. The tour was such a success that the following year they decided to do it all over again. Flying was seriously expensive in those days, but the club's president realized he could save a few pesos by chartering a small aircraft via the Uruguayan
Background noise says you can't scrum yourself out of freezing to death. What does that mean? What does scrum mean?
Air Force. That aircraft turned out to be a Fairchild FH-227D, a small twin turboprop aeroplane with space for 40 passengers and 5 crew. The Old Christians only needed 19 of the seats, so the players did their best to flog the rest to friends and family. By the morning of the flight, all 40 tickets had been sold for the equivalent of $40
Now,
apiece.
Dan says Pearl Jam has come. You give a chick a pearl necklace, it's coming on her, and it's called Pearl Jam. No, that's not it. No. Prove it. Prove that
At the
to
time, it seemed like a bargain. The Fairchild...
me. You think it's an orgy, a reference to an orgy performing at the same... Really? Really? I mean, honestly, I just heard this from somebody, so it could be completely inaccurate. And now there's 2 people saying it, so I'm with you guys. It's an orgy thing now. It's pearl necklace. Pearl jamming. And, you know, thinking about it, it actually does make sense.
Flight number 571 took off from Carrasco International Airport.
Feral pigeon, backs up. Okay, all right, so that's 3 people. So I'm going to go with you guys. You know, I've been wrong about things. I've been wrong about a lot of things. This is just another one of those things. I'm okay being wrong.
Montevideo on the morning of the 12th of October, 1972, bound for the Chilean capital, Santiago. The journey was scheduled to take a little over 4 hours. But as the plane passed through Argentinian airspace, the pilot received word that a severe storm was raging over the Andes up ahead. Flying over the Andes in a small plane like the Fairchild was a little sketchy at the best of times, so rather than take any undue risks, the pilot made an unscheduled stop in Mendoza. The plan was to spend the night there before trying again the following day. But by the next morning, the weather was no better, and that gave the pilot a bit of a dilemma. The sensible thing to do was to spend the second night in Mendoza, but at the time, foreign military aircraft weren't allowed to spend more than 24 hours in a row on Argentinian soil.
I'd ask, why didn't they just fly above the storm? But, like, I don't know how tall these mountains are, and I don't know the flight ceiling on this Fairchild aircraft, so I assume they can't fly that high.
And that left only 2 options. Either fly back to Carrasco and risk having to give a full refund to everyone on board, or push on through the storm
and kill everybody and put everyone in mortal danger. So refund everybody? Well, I mean, like, because you're still paying for the gas and stuff like that. So, or risk everybody's life. You're going to get sued. Somebody's getting sued. Risk everybody's life or have to refund everybody on the plane. That is poor decision making. Just give them the damn refund. If you're not 100% sure the plane is going to make it to its destination, don't leave the ground.
And hope for the best. No prize.
Are they retarded? How fucking retarded can you be? You're all like, we'll probably make it. Is that where you're a military pilot? You're part of the Argentinian Air Force or some bullshit like that. And you're like, we'll probably be fine. Wow, okay, you deserve it.
Just guessing.
But everybody on board didn't, so it's like, whatever. What are we talking about tonight? So far? Like a lot of eating dick and then coming on things. And do we cover anything else? Normal Sulk stream stuff.
Later that afternoon, the Fairchild took off from Mendoza Airport to complete the
I am aware of the show I do.
trip to Santiago.
Also, I'm not feeling very well, so that's why I got another cold, you know. I got like a headache and my throat's all scratchy and I'm really whiny right now, so be nice. You gotta be nice to me. Be nice to me. Where is my wife with my drink? God!
Just 125 miles separate the 2 airports, and the journey could theoretically have been completed in about 45 minutes.
Yes, Dan,
but
I got your
the direct route was...
I got your DM. Yes, I did. I watched some of it, and maybe it will make it into the lineup, bro. I don't know.
Inadvisable. This particular section of the Andes contains some of the tallest mountains on Earth, including Aconcagua, a 7,000-meter monster. That kind of altitude was right on the safe operating limit of the Fairchild. So rather than head straight for
so yeah, you can't go that high. You're gonna fly over mountains. Make sure it can't really go over mountains. Genius. Fucking brilliant.
Tiago,
Make sure you fly a plane that can't go over mountains.
to the course south towards the significantly lower Planchon Pass. This route would be more than 3 times longer, but it came with the added benefit of not crashing into a giant mountain halfway through. Well, that was the theory. In the cockpit that day was the immensely experienced Colonel Julio Ferradas, and...
Okay, I think we know what happened. Colonel Julio. I think Colonel Julio might have done something, like not planned properly. What did I do?
his not quite so immensely experienced co-pilot, Lieutenant Colonel.
Alright, let's notice something. This one's on point. This one's kind of looking over at something else. My pilots don't have to have eagle-eyed vision, but like if they were both pointing in the same direction, I would appreciate that. You might be different. Oh, and white. Some kind of Asian is also acceptable, but like the good kind, like the Japanese, Korean, some maybe Singapore or Taiwan, somewhere along that belt, right? So those two. Those two.
Ferradas had flown over the Andes dozens of times, so he used this assignment as an opportunity to train up his co-pilot. Which is why, as the Fairchild banked west towards the pass, it was LaGuardia who was at the controls. Thankfully, the worst of the weather had cleared up, but a thick layer of cloud still blanketed the pass below. That wasn't a problem, but it did mean that the inexperienced LaGuardia was navigating on his instruments alone. As we're about to see, that turned out to be pretty important.
Because he was like, it's going this way. He was, I don't mean to harp on the lazy eye, but like, they were like, this is your pilot, and he takes off his sunglasses, and then one of his eyes just like in its own zip code, then I would be like, no.
The Andes mountain range is the longest on Earth at a staggering 5.5 thousand miles.
Knob says more engineer than nail tech. Asians. Yeah, the nail tech Asians are like Vietnam, and those are the South Asians. Not those people. Not those people. No, I want the Asian kid from the Goonies to be my pilot. Right? I want like the Asians from like a Studio Ghibli movie to be my pilot. Not sniping from trees in Vietnam.
That's more than 2.5 times a day.
All right. Farrell with a 5, she says 15. All right, well, let's start this gambling establishment. Let's see what's going on. $28. Thank you for playing, Farrell. I appreciate that very much.
Diameter of the moon. But even at its widest, the range is only a smidge.
We're trying to work in some other gambling things, right? So it's not just a roulette wheel. I think we're thinking of a Plinko machine. We're trying to figure it out. We might bring some more games to this gaming establishment.
400 miles across.
Thinking about it. We'll work it out.
At Planchon Pass, it's just 125 miles. A flight time of around 25 minutes in the Fairchild. At approximately 3:20 p.m., LaGuardia radioed Santiago Airport to tell them he'd just flown over the radio beacon in the center of the pass. At 3:24 p.m., he again radioed Santiago. This time to tell them he'd reached Curico and was banking north to begin his descent. As they headed into the clouds, the plane began to shake violently, bucking and lurching like a rodeo bull. Since half the passengers were rugby lads, at first most of them tried to laugh it off. But as the ride grew wilder, even the laddiest of lads stopped laughing and started clinging on for dear life. Up front in the cockpit, LaGuardia was concentrating on bringing the plane down safely. But then the Fairchild broke through the clouds. The co-pilot was expecting to see the lush green valleys of Chile stretching out far below. But what he actually saw?
A big
was
ass
a
mountain. A big ass mountain. A big ass mountain. He was like, oh.
LaGuardia had just enough time to register the fact that that made absolutely no sense whatsoever. He'd just flown over Curacao in Chile, a good 25 miles or so from the nearest mountain. But whilst his brain told him there could be no sizable peaks anywhere near their current position, there was no arguing with the big fuck-off mountain that filled his entire windscreen. He yanked on the flight stick hard, attempting to avoid a collision by pulling the Fairchild into a climb so steep it would have given Tom Cruise a nosebleed. It almost worked too.
A climb. All right. All right. Just fucking bank that shit. Just bank it, dude. Just give it a hard bank. You're not going to climb over a fucking mountain, dude. Okay. There's like lenticular clouds over mountains. It's when wind gets pushed up over a mountain, and then the humidity of that wind, as it's going up, it forms a cloud on top of the mountain. What that wind does after it goes up, it shoots right back down. And so on the other side of this mountain, there's probably a very strong downwind that they're trying to climb up into. So they're fucking idiots, dude. Bank that shit.
Almost.
Bank it.
The underside of the plane struck the mountain with terrifying force. But thanks to LaGuardia's last-minute emergency maneuver, instead of disintegrating into a million tiny pieces, the Fairchild bounced. Once, twice, maybe 3 times it skipped up the mountain like a stone across a pond. The impact ripping off both wings and sending one of the propeller blades slicing through the cabin.
Oh.
In the midst of all this carnage, there was a sudden silence. The plane had cleared the top of the mountain.
Nice.
And for a second, it hung in the air as if weightless. But then the nose tipped forwards and the wrecked plane crashed back to Earth with such force that the tail cone was ripped clean off the back. 3 of the passengers and 2 of the crew were swept away with it. At this point, the wingless, tailless aeroplane effectively became the world's largest toboggan, racing down the snow-covered glacier on the other side of the mountain at 200 miles per hour. 2 more passengers were sucked out of the back of the plane before the Fairchild smashed into a snowdrift and came to a sudden, violent stop. For a moment, all was quiet. And then, the screaming started.
Yeah, okay, so they lucked out because, like, the thing that kills during a plane crash the most is fire. And, like, the wings already got ripped off, and they had tanks full of fuel. So, like, it's not the impact that typically kills the most people. It's the fire. Although, if you, like, it depends. It really depends.
Many people had broken bones, and blood spattered the plane's interior from a variety of flesh wounds. Several of the passengers were trapped under the rubble that now filled the plane. One of the rugby players, Nando Parado, had been knocked unconscious with what appeared to be a fractured skull.
Nice.
Another, Enrique Platero, stumbled around the cabin with a large metal rod sticking out of his stomach. Fernando Vasquez bled out on the floor of the plane. His leg had been severed almost in 2 when the propeller blade tore through the cabin during the crash. Thanks to a stroke of pure luck, 2 of the players...
Yes, Knob. Yeah. Well, no, it's not alive. You see the title of the... It's not alive.
Roberto Canessa and Gustavo Zabino happened to be medical students. Between them, they tended to the wounded, but there was only so much they could do. Neither was far along in his training, and beyond a few painkillers salvaged from handbags and rucksacks, they had almost nothing to work with. Still, they did their best with whatever they could find. Torn seat covers became bandages. Snow was used to bring down swelling, and a travel sewing kit allowed the 2 medics to make rudimentary surgical sutures. A couple of the boys went to check on the pilots. Ferradas was already dead, his chest crushed by the instrument panel. LaGuardia was still alive, but gravely wounded. his injuries clearly beyond the medical student's skills to heal. He begged for someone to shoot him and end his misery, but his revolver was nowhere to be seen. So he slipped slowly into his grave, muttering about Kuroko and the impossibility of the mountain they'd hit.
Grim.
By some miracle, 33 people survived the crash of Flight 571.
So most of them.
And as the sun began to set, they prepared for their first
All right.
night
Okay.
upon the mountain.
5 deaths, 7 missing. So let's say that's a 12 dead. Let's say 12 dead. 33. We're starting off with 33. Let's see how. I don't remember how many make it down. Some of them do make it down. If you've ever seen the movie, watch the movie.
It had already been cold, but as darkness fell, the temperature plummeted to somewhere.
If you are the lucky guy that only stubbed his toe, would you fake an injury? Yeah. Be like, oh, I would walk around and be like, ah, man, I got a headache, and then just eat all the food. I would go to the service cart and just start jamming my face with food. While everyone was like bleeding out, I'd be like, slamming those little alcohol minis, right? Still, there's calories.
In the region of minus 40 degrees Celsius. For reference, your home freezer is
Then I'm all
set
trashed. I'm like, yeah.
to about minus 18. Trying to sleep outside would have been death in a matter of minutes. So the survivors huddled together inside the crippled plane instead. Springtime temperatures in Santiago are fairly pleasant, so none of the passengers had packed anything particularly warm for their trip. Most didn't even have coats. In an effort to keep warm, they stripped the thin woolen covers off the Fairchild seats to use as makeshift blankets. They also plugged up the gaping hole in the back of the plane with rubble from the crash, fixed into place with snow. But, despite their best efforts, it was still bitter.
These guys being like the best shape of their life and like 17 years old probably helped them quite a bit. If it was like it was a retirement thing, like a plane full of boomers, it's not going to work out. It's not going to work out at all. There would be some Karen complaining, trying to complain themselves to safety, and I don't think that would work. All I'm saying is they were young and in good shape, so that probably helped quite a bit.
Cold enough to kill. By the time the sun rose on the morning of the 14th of October, 5 more people were dead.
Knob, see, this is why I fucking hate you, dude. He's like, the book is better. Oh, the book is better. Yeah, the book is so much better. I read the book. It's so much better. Shut up. Shut the fuck up. I hate it when people say that. I don't care if the book is better. I'm not reading it. I'm not reading a book. Do I seem like a book reader to you? No. Shut up. The book is better. No, I don't fucking care. God, I hate it. I hate it when people say that. I hate that shit. I hate that shit.
In the aftermath of the crash, the survivors had hardly had a chance.
Yeah, Knobs can't even read. Right? He's just dictating all his asshole comments into my chat.
Get their bearings. But on the morning of that first day on the mountain, they finally had a chance to take stock of their situation. The fuselage of the Fairchild had come to a halt in a snow-swept glacial valley, ringed by towering mountains.
He's defending himself now. Good. I want to put you on the defensive, Knob. Finally.
3 sides. There was no vegetation of any kind anywhere in sight, and all they had to eat and drink was some chocolate, some dried fruit, a few packets of biscuits, 2 tins of mussels, several jars of jam.
Farrell says the book is always better. Hollywood turned 2 of my favorite books into absolute garbage. You know what we're going to do? We're going to have like a sponsored Sulk stream book burning, right? You can donate a book and then I will burn it. And if you don't have the book, send me like the price of the book plus like shipping and handling and I don't know, $20. And then I'll buy the book and then I will burn it. I will have a big pile of books on my driveway, and I will burn that shit with a flamethrower and everything. I got access to one. I don't have it, but I have access to one. So like, man, huh? What about all of those child trans books? You guys are all like, I'm not into this idea, but then you're like, I'm kind of into this idea. Yeah. It'll be a party, dude. I'll have a good time.
And some wine. With 28 hungry mouths to feed.
I can't be your sponsor, John. I'm not sober. Well, I mean, like, okay, good.
A strict rationing system was put into place immediately, with each person given a single square of chocolate.
Not my. You're not sponsoring my recovery. You're sponsoring a book burning. Okay, everyone gives a certain amount of money and then donates a book, and then I burn them on stream, right? And I'm like, this is what we think of you, and then it'll be good. It'll be good. I swear I'll fucking do it. I'll do it. If you guys are down with it, I will do that.
A spoonful of jam and a single swallow.
I'm not reading it. Not reading it.
Despite the apparently hopeless situation, the overall mood amongst the survivors wasn't quite as bleak as you might think. By some miracle, they'd survived both.
Okay, Zach's not into the book burning idea. Okay, that's fine. That's fine. All right, we don't have to do a book burning. We'll figure something else out.
The blisteringly cold night on the mountain, terrifying and tragic as it had been, the worst.
Okay,
was surely
Dan,
over.
stop. I'll do it.
By now, they should have been missed.
For that one, I'll catch a lot of heat. I'm not even going to say it, but like for that one, I will catch a lot of heat.
And such a rescue operation would already be underway. As it happens, that assumption was spot on. Flight 571 had been reported missing within an hour of the crash, and a huge search effort had been launched almost immediately. But there was one small problem. They were looking in completely the wrong place. There was no radar coverage of the Planchon Pass in those days, so all the search team had to go on was the information LaGuardia had given to air traffic control shortly before the crash, that the Fairchild had reached Curacao and was banking north to begin its descent towards Santiago. Based on that report, the rescue effort was focused between Curacao and Santiago, and at first the team were optimistic. Most of the flight path was on or near populated areas, so there was a good chance somebody would have seen something. But that optimism soon turned to confusion as the search turned up absolutely nothing. No sign of the plane, and not a single witness with any information relating to the crash.
So your first thought would be like, okay, they crashed somewhere else. So search the fucking mountains. I feel like I don't know. I just feel like they made so many mistakes.
Flight 571 appears to have vanished into thin air.
Yeah, Arden says, Zax, what's your rarest book? What is your rarest book, Zax? You're a book collector. Tell us, do you have a first edition of Don Quixote or something like that? I'm sure that would be amazingly expensive.
Luckily,
a Gutenberg Bible.
Someone on the team had the presence of mind to take a closer look at the final communications between LaGuardia and air traffic control. And that was when they noticed something strange. You may have even spotted it yourself earlier in the video. Let's rewind a bit. Nobody had noticed at the time, but if LaGuardia was over the middle of Planchon Pass at 3:20 p.m.
Do you understand how tall these mountains were that they were flying over, John? I think he said like 16,000 feet. But I don't know. I didn't catch it. I didn't really catch it. No.
And the total flight time from one side to the other was about 20.
Background says his prized copy of Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants. Yeah, my signed edition of Eat, Pray, Love.
How that
21,000 meters? Holy shit. So that's like 60,000 feet, dude. Holy shit. Not 16. I was like, 16 doesn't sound all that high. Although 16 is pretty high, don't get me wrong. But 60,000 feet, that's pretty high. That's... Really? That is really, really high.
The hell did he make it to Kuroko just 4 minutes later? The answer to that question was simple.
So Dan Snot says 21,000 meters. Knob says between 13 and 20,000 feet. I don't know, Dan. I don't know if that's 60,000, because a meter is 3 feet long. You understand that? So, like, I thought I heard that. Maybe I'm wrong. Yeah, because that is a gigantic... I don't even know how tall Everest is, but 60,000 feet is a... Most planes fly at 35,000 feet. So, I don't think it's 60,000 feet. Maybe it is 16,000 feet. But then I'm like, why can't you fly over at 16,000 feet? Well, it's probably like a turboprop engine. It's not like a jet engine, but still. You think you'd be able to go to 20?
He didn't. Flight 571 had never made it to Kuroko. LaGuardia had turned north too soon and begun his descent whilst they were still in the middle of the Andes. And for exactly how that happened, to this day, it's still a bit of a mystery. The plane's radio navigation equipment...
Good, Knob. Never give us a book recommendation again. Never do that again. Never do. What do you think? We're going to be like, oh, yeah, I'll definitely read that. I'll definitely take time out of my day to read that. I won't. I won't do that. I might say I will. Just be nice, but I won't. I mean, if you guys sent me a book, there is a chance I might get a few chapters into it. But beyond that, that's it. I'm not going to read it cover to cover unless it's really good. I don't know. I'm not a big reader. I'm sure you guys have noticed that by now.
Seems to have been functioning normally during the flight, and the flight plan through the pass was about as straightforward as it
22,838 is the highest
from
point.
one radio beacon to the next. Either his instruments or plain common sense should have told LaGuardia that he couldn't possibly have made it from the center of the pass to Kuroko in 4 minutes flat. And even if he had made a careless mistake, the vastly more experienced Colonel Ferradas should have stepped in to fix it. We'll likely never know what happened inside that cockpit. But crucially, the search and rescue team were able to put the puzzle pieces...
Max altitude of that plane is 25K. Okay. Yeah, I believe that. So, yeah, they could have pulled over it, but, you know, here's what they fucked up, right? They thought that they went past Curacao, and they were on their descent approach to Santiago. And so they were losing altitude, and then, yeah, they weren't like at cruising altitude, so they were like lower than they,
together and figure out roughly where the Fairchild went down. The good news was that this newly defined search area included the location of the wreckage. The bad news was that
Ardenshire says, this is my level of reading. This is my level of... I am a bunny. It looks adorable. I do read kids' books, but like, because I have to, because I have kids. And they're like, read to me, Daddy. I'm like, God, do you ever stop? But Daddy, I love you. I'm like,
that there was a truly enormous amount of ground to cover. It was like looking for a needle in a haystack. Actually, it was worse. Needles aren't hay-colored.
Yeah, you're right, Farrell. You're right. Albuquerque is way too far away. Has anybody even been to Albuquerque? I hear a lot of shit about Albuquerque. Is it that bad? Is Albuquerque that bad? I've seen Breaking Bad. Is Albuquerque that bad?
The Andes in spring are blanketed in a generous dusting.
Ardenshire says that was actually my favorite book when I was 3. Okay, well then that's a book recommendation that I might consider. Honestly, I might consider that because I have kids. All right, I don't have hours to sit around reading fiction books. All right? Long, thick ass fantasy books where like there's like 1,000 words just to set the setting, you know. I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. I got shit to do. Or I don't. And then I don't want to do that.
Pristine white snow. Which
I don't watch a lot of TV shows. Sometimes I do with my wife. We'll get into a TV show. But if it's not banging, if it is not on point banging, if there is a lull in the plot or something like that, I'm out. I'm out. All right? You got to be feeding me dopamine. All right? My brain is burnt to shit. I'm out. You know, some shows are pretty good. I've been liking Pluribus. Fallout it lost me. It lost me. I liked the first season. The second season was a little boring.
Happens to be the exact same color of the Fairchild. The survivors saw 3 aircraft flying overhead during their first few days in the mountains. But none of these so-called
we canceled our
planes lived up
Netflix.
to their name. From the air, the Fairchild.
We canceled our Netflix because they kept trying to turn my kids gay. And I was like, how about no? How about absolutely not? No, this isn't one of those households that lets you spread your wings and be who you want to be. No. You're going to be who I tell you to be.
Practically invisible. On the ground, the survivors were still optimistic that help
Not a
was
gay little tard. That's what you're going to be. You're not going to be a little gay little fruitcake, okay?
on the way. But clearly it was going to take a few days longer than expected. And that meant they needed to start taking their long-term survival seriously. For starters, they needed access
Rancho Cucamonga. I used to have an uncle that lived in Rancho Cucamonga. I think he's dead. I'm not sure. I don't care.
to plenty of drinking water. At first, that might sound ridiculous. They were surrounded by billions of tons of quality H2O in the form of snow and ice. But whilst everyone knows you shouldn't eat yellow snow, it turns out that
Trust me, I'm over here shielding them from all kinds of shit, dude. And they're like, God, dude, like every show has like some sort of trans character in it now. I'm like, nope. No. Spider-Man doesn't have tits, okay?
even eating the white variety is a pretty bad idea in a survival situation. Not only can it make you dangerously cold quickly, the amount of energy it takes to warm yourself back up again can result in a net loss of hydration anyway. So, how the hell do you melt snow in sub-zero temperatures if using your own body heat isn't an option? Well, it was a boy called Fito Strau who figured out.
Adolf was his name. It's behind me. You can't see it, but his name was Adolf. Fito was his nickname. Adolfo, but Adolf. So go ahead and go. We're going to call him Fito. No, his name is Adolf. Came in to save the world again.
That's the answer. Inside every sheet on the aircraft was a thin sheet of aluminium foil.
Jess, can you bring me another drink, please? Another bubble water. Oh, she says I was trying to watch Power Rangers with the big boy, our oldest, and there was a troon shit in it, and I'm like, what the fuck? WTF? Yep. Power Rangers. You can't escape it now, man. It's all over the fucking place. You can't fucking escape it. It's just infuriating. It's infuriating. It's like, it's straight up disrespectful. Look, if you want to be gay and have your gay little cartoons over there, that's fine. But like, can it be separate? Can we resegregate society? I've been saying this for a long time.
Strau folded these sheets into shallow bowls, then filled them with snow and left them on the roof of the plane tilted towards the sun. They functioned like mini sun traps, generating just enough heat to melt the snow. Since proper medical care wouldn't be available anytime soon, Canessa and Zabino did their best to help the injured. After being given up for dead, Nando Prado, the rugby player with the suspected skull fracture, randomly woke up from his coma on day 3. It's hard to imagine just how disorientating it must have been for him, especially since the first thing he learned was that his mother had died in the crash and his sister was badly wounded. But somehow he found the strength and courage to get to work right away. Those who'd suffered broken bones were mostly fairly stable. Their wounds would take weeks, if not months, to heal, but they were kept as comfortable as possible inside the plane. The survivors even managed to fashion crude hammocks for the worst of the injured, so they wouldn't be jostled by others during the night. The guy with the metal rod in his stomach, Enrique Platero, was doing surprisingly well. Roberto Canassa had yanked the metal out, taking 6 inches of what looked like intestines with it. Canessa had simply shoved everything back inside and stitched up the wound.
You're supposed to be a med student? You're just like, let's just pack that back in. He's not made of stuffing. He's not a teddy bear, right? Whatever comes out stays out, all right? You're not going to put stuff back in, especially in this kind of circumstances. It's going to, oh my God, what an idiot.
With water, shelter, and rudimentary medical care taken care of,
Archer says, dude, I got an ad on a game yesterday where a woman was straight up This is a family show. Not exaggerating. They aren't even hiding it. Herself? How do you fist your... How? How deep? And in what orifice? And why is that an ad? Who needs to advertise that? Were they selling a product or just showing off? Like, check it out. Check it out. That's almost to the elbow.
That left one major issue: food. As the days ticked by, it became the single biggest topic of conversation. With their rations dwindling, the survivors attempted to eat anything that looked even remotely edible, including belt leather, linen, and even the foam from inside the seats. It only made them feel worse, but what else could they do? There was simply nothing to eat. Except that wasn't
She hadn't taken the putting organs back in a body 101 class yet. Yeah, well, you just don't do it here. You just don't do it. You're like, oh, this is intestine. It looks like it's got some poop in there. I just said, jam that back in there. It's good.
actually 100% true. Of the 15 people dead or missing...
It was a dating app? A dating app ad. That doesn't... So come to this dating app and you're going to meet chicks who can fist themselves? It's also tiresome, dude. It's all so fucking tiresome. Like, when are we just going to fucking snap as a society and just be like, you know what? We're reeling all this shit in. We're going to reel all this shit. All of this shit is gone. And don't be like, oh, it's never going to happen. It's definitely going to happen. And it might be pretty violent. I'm just letting you guys know.
At the time, 5 had died in the crash, and another 5 died in the days afterwards. Then there was Susana Parado,
right.
Nando's sister, who
Trail pitch, and she wants 29. Let's see 29. Let's see if we can get 29. If it's 29, I'm not fisting myself. Okay, it's 10. It's just had to throw that out there.
on the 9th day. There was no way to give the dead a proper burial, so the survivors had simply dragged the bodies outside and left them in the snow. I mentioned earlier that nighttime temperatures were colder than your freezer, but that had one unexpected benefit. The bodies of the dead were frozen solid, and the meat was fresh. To begin with, nobody even entertained the idea of eating the dead, but the situation was getting desperate. At such high altitude and in permanently freezing conditions, just staying alive put huge energy demands on the bodies of the survivors.
Cash says FTM are always less to deal with because they're women. They're naturally agreeable. Yeah, unlike the MTF, who are delusional, angry men and severe porn addicts. Yeah, and they stab people. They stab They stab people. The men stab people. Not to say there hasn't been cases of like the women stabbing people, but like I'm sure there has. But like the men, they stab people. The women do it just because they want to be a part of something. They want to be like in a group, and one of the groups is, especially if it's like a group like that, it's very tight knit. But like the men are always porn addicted, and they're like, I'm a trans lesbian and shit like that. Oh yeah, is that okay? Well, like, So you decided you're a chick now, but you still like to have sex with chicks, but you're not willing to have sex with another trans lesbian because it's a guy. Okay.
Without a constant supply of calories to feed those demands, the equation became very simple. Before long, every single one of them was going to starve to death. Still, it was far from an easy decision to break our species' ultimate taboo. The people on board that plane had almost all been...
Zach says, if I want to get jacked without steroids, creatine is my best bet, right? No, just take steroids. This is not medical advice. Just take steroids. This is not medical advice. Just take fucking steroids.
Either teammates, friends, or family. Turning to cannibalism didn't just mean choosing to eat.
It'll give you the shits, but it won't hurt you.
Eat human flesh.
Creatine, I mean.
Consuming the bodies of the people they loved. By the 10th day, the lack of food had become critical. The rations were long gone, and the survivors had begun to starve, their bodies consuming themselves in an effort to stave off death. That afternoon, the group held a meeting with only one item on the agenda: whether or not they would eat the dead. Even then, staring death squarely in the face, there was no consensus. All the survivors were Catholics, and many worried that by resorting to cannibalism, they would condemn their immortal souls. But if they didn't, within a matter of days, every single one of them would be dead. The discussion was going nowhere until Gustavo Zabino stood up to talk. The other survivors expected him to give his opinion on what they should do, but he didn't. What he said was this.
Yeah, the oppression scale has trainees above blacks now. Yeah. I mean, I hate the entire... I mean, we could do a tier list of like the most oppressed and the least, like S is the most oppressed, and then the F tier is the least oppressed. Or maybe we'll flip that and be like, these are the most acceptable people, and these are the least acceptable people. And trans would probably be the least acceptable people. They're unbearable.
If I die up here, you have my permission to eat my body. That simple statement changed everything, because every single person present realized that they felt exactly the same. Roberto Canessa went outside. When he returned, he was holding a strip of human flesh in his hand. In front of his fellow survivors, he put the meat in his mouth and began to chew. About half the survivors followed Canessa's lead that night, but many refused, either on religious grounds or simply because they couldn't physically bring themselves to do it. But the very next day, something happened that forced almost all of them to willingly turn to cannibalism. You see, a few days earlier, one of the youngest members of the group, a boy called Roy Harley, had found a small radio in the rubble. Hartley was an amateur radio enthusiast, and he'd managed to fashion a makeshift antenna using bits of wire salvaged from the cockpit. The signal was still extremely weak, and he never listened for long because he didn't want to waste a battery. But every day after waking up, he went outside, turned on the radio, and listened. On the morning of the 11th day, he finally heard it. A news bulletin. And soon enough, the anchor introduced a topic Roy Harley had been waiting for: the search for Flight 571. At first, he was delighted, but his celebrations didn't last long, because it quickly became clear that this wasn't an update on the search. It was the official announcement that the entire thing was being called off. Now, the survivors of Flight...
Damn, that's grim. They're like, okay, we're not looking for you anymore. That's pretty grim.
571 learnt their by side could have broken them, But it actually kind of did the opposite. Many of the group had been clinging on to the hope that help was on the way, that if they could just make it through one more night, they'd wake up to the sound of helicopters landing in the snow outside the plane. After the news bulletin, that hope was gone for good. Their continued survival rested entirely in their hands. On the one hand, that absolutely sucked, but it was also kind of empowering. Two things changed immediately. One, almost everyone who'd refused to eat human meat the day before accepted that they now had no choice. And two, the mindset of the group switched from simply surviving to something else entirely, making it back to civilization on their own. This shift happened so fast that just over an hour after learning that the search had been called off,
right, what are you going to do? They're not coming for you. You got to start walking. I think I would have done that a while back, but what are they, on day 10? Longer?
3 of the fittest survivors, Gustavo Zubino, Numa Tukati, and Daniel Maspons, set off on an expedition to try and find a way out of the mountains. Unfortunately, there was one small problem with Operation Get the Hell Out of Here. Nobody knew exactly where here even was. All they had to work with were the words of the dying co-pilot who was convinced they'd flown over Curacao. That should have put them somewhere to the west of the Andes, which didn't really make any sense. They were very clearly still in the Andes. The giant mountains surrounding them on all sides were a bit of a giveaway. But with nothing else to go on, it was the best information they had. In the end, they figured they somehow must have crashed right on the western edge of the mountain range. And if that were true, civilization should be just a stone's throw away on the other side of the towering peak to the west. That made things pretty simple. All they had to do was scale the mountain, and they should be able to find help. But simple doesn't mean easy. Having spent nearly 2 weeks stranded in the mountains, even the fittest of the boys was in pretty bad shape. Add that to the altitude, their lack of equipment, and the deep snow that covered the valley, and even walking just a few meters proved to be incredibly challenging. As the slope got steeper, approaching 45 degrees in some places, the explorers could only manage a few paces before having to rest. Despite the brutal conditions, they kept at it all day. They'd hoped to make the summit before nightfall, but as the sun began to set, they weren't even halfway. So they found a small outcropping of rock to provide shelter from the wind, then settled down for their first night, exposed to the elements. The exertion of the climb had kept them relatively warm for a while, but as darkness fell, the temperature plummeted. Before long, the cold was physically painful, and soon enough that pain was replaced by something even worse, terrifying numbness. The boys tried to keep each other warm by huddling together, but that hardly did anything, so they started punching and slapping each other to try and get the blood flowing. Having survived a plane crash on a desolate mountain and watched several of their close friends die before their eyes in various horrible ways, these 3 young men were fairly familiar with hardship. But that night on the mountain gave each of them
skin to skin.
New understanding.
Everyone stripped down
just
naked.
How much suffering a human being can take.
Nut to butt, boys.
Not one of them believed they would still be alive by the morning. But by some miracle, they were all still breathing when the sun finally rose. Showing a kind of bravery that is frankly astonishing, they didn't immediately head back down the mountain to the safety of the plane. Instead, they pushed on. None of them were under any illusions. The night had proved beyond all doubt that escape on foot was impossible. But this little frozen foray had had a secondary objective all along. You see, hiking out of the mountains wasn't the only potential route to safety for the survivors. There was another way out. Like any aeroplane, the Fairchild was equipped with a radio. Unpowered, it was useless. But according to a survivor called Carlos Roque, the Fairchild's engineer, the radio could run on batteries. Unfortunately, those batteries were stored in the Fairchild's tail cone. You know, the one that fell off. But if they were able to locate the tail, in theory, they could simply radio for help. So, Zabino, Tokati, and Maspon spent the day hunting for the plane's missing tail. They didn't find it, but they did find something. After cresting a small rise, scattered in the snow, they discovered the blackened, frozen bodies of 5 people, the passengers and crew who'd been sucked out of the plane during the crash.
All right, well, that's a
grisly
clue.
discovery, the boys decided to head back to camp before things got any worse. Gustavo Zabino was beginning to have trouble with his eyesight, the early signs of snow blindness. And Daniel Maspons had lost one of his shoes. His feet were so numb from the cold, he hadn't even noticed. Getting back to camp proved much easier than leaving it.
That shit's gonna be black, dude. You're gonna lose a foot.
Had been. During the trek, they'd found several of the Fairchild seats half buried in the snow, and they used the seat cushions as makeshift sleds, bombing down the mountain at full
Yeah, they're still kids. Yeah.
speed and arriving at the plane in a matter of minutes. The short-lived expedition showed the survivors exactly what they were up against. A single night exposed on the mountain had almost killed 3 of the strongest boys, and Zabino was left completely blind for 3 full days. All of that, and they hadn't even managed to get out of the valley that they were stuck in. This could have despaired them, but this was a truly remarkable group of human beings. So,
I mean, like, look, if you're gonna die, right? You're gonna die anyway. You might as well just fucking roll the dice. It's not. I mean, it is remarkable. It's amazing and shit like that. But like, it's like, okay, what else are you gonna do? You just end up doing it. You're not gonna roll over and die. No one rolls over and dies. You don't do that. You push on.
instead of giving up, they got to work. With escape from the mountains beyond them for the time being, they turned their attention to the business of survival. Previously, they'd been pretty much living from day to day, without much thought for the future. Now, they started to systematically plan for the weeks ahead. That first expedition hadn't beaten them. It had simply shown them that they were going to need to be stronger and better prepared if they wanted to succeed the next time around. With that in mind, the survivors split themselves up into groups, with each group assigned a different job. Having spent 2 weeks on the mountain with almost nothing to eat, the first priority was building their strength back up, and the best way to do that was to eat. One of the team was tasked with harvesting meat from the bodies of the dead, and another was responsible for preparing it, either by leaving it to dry in the sun, or, if the wind was calm enough to make a fire, cooking it. One team looked after the snow melters, another kept the inside of the plane neat and tidy. Between them, every conceivable job was covered.
It's good
There
to
was
stay
even
busy.
An official chamber pot manager.
The poop. Oh, he's the poop guy. He wasn't very popular. He's the poop guy.
whose duty it was to ensure nobody got caught short during the night. With the logistics of staying alive mostly taken care of, life settled into something of a rhythm. But nothing on the mountain ever stayed the same for long. And just when it felt like things were getting easier, everything went to shit.
Avalanche. Yeah, avalanche. Of course it's an avalanche. Of course it's a fucking avalanche. That sucks.
Late on the 29th of October, their 17th night on the mountain, a huge avalanche swept through the valley. It hit the plane with such force it completely obliterated the makeshift wall at the back, filling the fuselage with snow almost up to the ceiling. Some of the survivors were lucky, thanks to their position in the plane or the protection of some random bit of junk. They were only partially covered. Others were buried out of sight beneath the crushing snow.
It's not.
Despite their violence, avalanches are not typically fast killers. Most victims don't die as a result of the physical trauma. Buried beneath the snow, they die of asphyxiation. Those first few minutes passed in a frantic, terrified blur as the survivors tried first to free themselves, then each other. Whenever they found a body, they would dig out the snow from around their head as quickly as possible, clearing the airways, then move on to the next person. That quick thinking likely saved several lives that night. But as the minutes continued to tick by, the frenzied digging for survivors slowly morphed into a desolate search for the dead.
Oh, more people to eat, I guess.
8 people lost their lives that night.
Damn.
All of them suffocating under the weight of the snow before their friends were able to dig them out. Amongst the dead were Daniel Maspons, survivor of the first expedition, Carlos Roque, the mechanic who told the group about the batteries in the tail, and Liliana Meffel, the last surviving woman. Her devastated husband survived.
Damn.
Once everyone was accounted for,
That
both
sucks.
the living and the dead, the remaining 19 survivors took stock of their situation. The avalanche had completely buried the plane. Not only did that mean they were now effectively underground, it also meant they were in a completely closed system. Every breath they took diminished their oxygen supply. The survivors tried to dig their way out.
Not too bad of a loss. 8
plane,
people?
but the snow
8
was already
people in an
beginning to
avalanche? Like, for an avalanche, there's been bad avalanches that have buried complete towns and has killed a lot of people. But, like, that's not a good way to go. Because you're sitting there thinking about it, right? You get buried, and then you're like, well, I have a few minutes to be like, I'm going to die. I'm going to die down here.
solidify into.
I'm laughing because it's sad.
They were trapped, and the clock was ticking.
That's what we did
8
here.
of
It's a
their
Sulk
number
stream.
asphyxiated
That's the
under
entire point of
snow
the show.
in the aftermath of the avalanche. If the survivors didn't act fast, they would experience a much slower version of the same fate. As the oxygen levels continued to drop, several people began to feel lightheaded, but they didn't panic. Nando Parado found a long metal rod in the rubble, and he used it to pierce a hole in the roof of the plane, working up through the snow until he broke the surface. They were still stuck in what was basically a giant coffin, alongside the bodies of 8 of their friends, but at
Damn.
least they weren't in immediate danger of suffocating. After trying, and mostly failing, to get some sleep, the survivors began.
Arden Share says, I lost everything to dysentery in the past, so an avalanche seems like the better option. Were you like on the Oregon Trail? I'm sorry, but I had to make the joke. I'm sorry.
Figuring out what to do next.
Yeah, I
They
had to make the
realised
joke,
that
I'm
since the
sorry.
avalanche had struck the rear of the plane, the snow should, in theory, be shallowest at the front. So with that in mind, they began their great escape by painstakingly digging a tunnel out through the cockpit. It was brutal work. Not only were they forced to dig through the snow mostly by hand, they had the frozen bodies of the pilot and co-pilot for company whilst they worked. Eventually, they managed to dig a narrow tunnel all the way to the surface. But when they
Damn,
got there,
survivors,
they
though.
discovered that whilst they were no longer trapped by the snow, they were trapped by something else instead. The weather. A huge snowstorm was raging outside, forcing the survivors to take shelter in the buried plane for the following 3 days. 3 days which proved to be the hardest any of them had ever experienced. Not only were they trapped underground in a snow-filled cave with almost no light, they were also cut off from their old food supply, which was buried under the snow somewhere outside. Before the avalanche, they'd done a pretty good job of depersonalizing the production of meat. Only a few of the survivors were directly involved in the harvesting process, and since the bodies were partially buried under the snow, most of the time it wasn't entirely clear who it was they were cutting up, or which part of them. From there, the meat was either dried in the sun or occasionally cooked. Not only did that make it significantly more palatable, it also made it seem more like normal food and less like your best mate's left bum cheek. Now though,
Yeah, well,
things were very different.
I would cook
The only
it.
source of sustenance came from those.
I like how I'm like watching this, and it's freezing here. It's not quite freezing, but what's the temperature? It's cold. It's cold. It's gonna get even colder. It's gonna be 20. It's gonna be 23 degrees here on Sunday. Right now it's 43. So it's going to drop another 20 degrees. And this is Florida, man. This is not, it's not like I'm not used to it, right? Because I grew up like near the Sierra Nevadas, going up like over Donner Pass a lot. Another place where people ate each other. But like here it's weird, man.
Who had died in the avalanche. In other words, the survivors were forced to eat the friends whose loss they were still coming to.
My giant ass? Look, if you eat me, you're going to want these thick, buttery thighs. That's what you're going to want. These things are... That's a good cut of meat right there. That's a good cut of meat. Bon appetit. You know, because that's going to feed you. I'll feed the whole plane.
To turn to. Trapped inside that small space, there was no mistaking who and what was being eaten. And with no access to either sunlight or fire, they had to eat the meat fully raw for the first time.
Ugh.
To call the
I'd do
experience
it.
traumatic would be something of an understatement. After 3 days in this unique and horrific hell, the blizzard eased off and the survivors were able to venture above ground for the first time. The plane had been completely buried by the snow, but they didn't waste any energy trying to dig it out. The icy shell would protect them in case of another avalanche. Speaking of other avalanches, the group made a pragmatic decision in case another one struck. Previously, the food supply had been kept outside, for obvious reasons, but after the avalanche, the survivors made sure to keep a limb or two inside the fuselage, just in case they found themselves...
Yeah, I'd rather it be cold than be hot. Like, when it's, like, hot, there's not much I can do. I run hot, too, so it's like, I'll just sit there and I'll sweat. I sweat bad, dude. I sweat bad. Even in the wintertime, even when I'm cold, I'm like, I'm still sweating. I'm still sitting here just fucking sweating. And, like, it's just, I can't stop. I can't stop. And I need to be in the water if it's hot like that. In the cold, I can just put on extra clothes and stuff, but it still gets annoying.
Trapped underground again. It took more than a week to restore some sort of order to the camp. But once things finally settled down, thoughts turned once again to escape.
Support John's shady plane trip to Argentina here. I'm going to go eat me some people. I'm going to go get me some long pig. Right? It's going to be cooked, though.
Nando Prado was the keenest to mount another expedition. He saw the avalanche as proof that if they simply stayed put, sooner or later, something was going to kill them. But desperate as he was to get going, he knew that surviving a multi-day expedition exposed on the mountain was impossible. At least it was for now. But things were changing. By this point, it was early November, and that meant Southern Hemisphere summer was just around the corner. Every week that went by, they were inching towards temperatures that might just make a hike to civilization genuinely viable. And so, rather than rush things, they set a date for the next expedition. The 15th of November. That left a couple of weeks for the temperature to rise and to prepare for the grueling journey ahead.
So it's just the start of winter. It's just the start of winter. I'd be like, God damn.
The first item on the to-do list was to figure out who would go on the next mission. Nando Prado, the guy who'd only woken up from a 3-day coma a few weeks earlier, volunteered immediately, as did Numa Tukasi, a veteran of the first expedition, but an injury eventually ruled him out, so the medic Roberto Canessa took his place.
The medic.
The other member of that first trip,
the only medic you have.
Daniel Maspons, had died in the avalanche, which left one space free. They held mini trials for this spot, testing several of the boys for fitness and mental endurance. In the end, a boy called Antonio Vizintin, Tintin,
they used his first name
for short, made the cut. All three of these men were excused from the majority of chores around the camp, and they were given extra meat rations to build up their strength. The next job was to prepare their equipment. Gustavo Zabino's debilitating snow blindness had taught them the need for decent eye protection. There weren't enough sunglasses to go around, so ever resourceful, they made some by sewing tinted plastics they'd found in the cockpit into bra straps using electrical wire. They weren't exactly Ray-Bans, but they did the job. One thing they actually had quite a lot of at this point was clothes. With so many people dead, there were spares of everything. There was still a distinct lack of warm weather gear, but they made up for it by layering. Parado, Canessa, and Tintin were each given 3 pairs of trousers, 2 jumpers, and a jacket. Arguably, the biggest issue was footwear. On the first expedition, Daniel Masbon's feet had grown so numb, he'd unknowingly lost a shoe after a single day. Without adequate protection, a multi-day hike would inevitably lead to frostbite. They needed something warmer. But what? Now, feel free to write your best guess as to how they solved this one in the comments below. $100 bucks to anyone who gets it right. That, and a strong recommendation to go see a psychotherapist.
Oh my god.
Because the solution to the footwear problem was equal parts ingenious and horrifying. You see, there was one warm, waterproof material in plentiful supply around the camp: human skin. It turns out that if you cut away the skin on a human forearm with a little bit of needlework, you can fashion yourself a pretty good sock. Oh, and be sure to leave a layer of fat for a little bit of extra insulation against a cold.
I didn't see that in the movie.
Okay, so I know it sounds pretty extreme, but when you think about it, it isn't all that much different from making shoes out of animal leather. And, crude though they were, the skin socks proved extremely effective. By the time the 15th of November arrived, the survivors were as ready as they'd ever be, but the weather was refusing to cooperate. Another snowstorm had rolled into the valley and stuck fast, forcing everyone to huddle inside the freezing plain yet again. The conditions were relentless, and the malnourished survivors were suffering. But 2 in particular were significantly worse off than the rest. Arturo Nogueira and Rafael Echeverren had both sustained severe injuries in the crash. Nogueira had broken both his legs in multiple places, and Echeverren's entire calf muscle had been peeled clean off the bone. These were the kinds of wounds that would have taken months to heal in a fully equipped hospital. In the dirty, dank fuselage, not only were they not healing, they were beginning to show the telltale signs of gangrene. The snowstorm raged for 2 full days. Arturo Nogueira wouldn't live to see the other side of it, and Echeverren passed away a day after the skies cleared. Their deaths served as yet another reminder, not that anyone needed it, that they were living life at the very limit of human endurance. None of them were going to make it out of this alive if they didn't get help soon.
Well, that's more skin
when
socks.
When the snowstorm finally blew itself out, Parado, Canessa, and Tintin set off to try and do exactly that. On the previous expedition, they'd forged west, straight up the mountain they assumed separated them from Chile. But the route had proven so steep, it might as well have been a vertical wall. So this time, they went the other way, straight down the valley to the east. On the plus side, the going was much easier. On the not so plus side, they were heading in completely the wrong direction. But there was some method to this map-based madness. The survivors reasoned that, like rivers, glaciers should ultimately flow downhill towards the sea. Since they know the nearest ocean was the coast of Chile, they assumed their glacier-carved valley would, sooner or later, curve back around to the west. That logic was, unfortunately, a little shaky. Plenty of glaciers do indeed flow towards the ocean, but plenty others do not, especially the ones on top of mountains. This is the Cerro Cathedral. Standing at a frankly embarrassing 514 meters, it is the tallest mountain in the whole of Uruguay. The survivors were understandably not all that knowledgeable about the ways of glaciers. Most of them had never even seen snow before the accident. Anyway, the expedition team piled their supplies, mostly human meat stuffed into rugby socks and seat cover blankets, into half a suitcase, which they pulled along behind them like a sled. They'd been hiking like this for about an hour and a half when they made a completely unexpected discovery. Half buried in the snow was to Fairchild's severed tail cone.
There you go.
Somehow it had skidded right
There
past
you
the
go.
fuselage during the chaos of the crash. It contained some absolutely banging loot, including some warm clothing, some food and drink, and a small supply of medicine. By this point, they'd been wearing the same clothes for the past 5 weeks, so they discarded their filthy rags and put on the warmest gear they could find. The highlight on that front were several sets of thick woolen socks, enough for 3 pairs each. The sizing wasn't perfect, but on the plus side, they weren't made of crudely sewn human skin. Some looted shopping bags wrapped around the outside even made the new footwear relatively waterproof. Tucked away in a battered suitcase, they also found a camera. At the time, it didn't seem all that important. You can't eat a camera, no matter how hungry you are. But whilst it didn't help the survivors, it proved incredibly valuable for the rest of us. It was that device that captured the absolutely mind-blowing images you've been seeing throughout this video. With most of the day already gone, the explorers decided to spend the night in the tail. They made a small fire and treated it.
Farrell says, anyone think they could do what these guys did to survive? I think I couldn't, but I've never. You would do it. You would do it. Like, okay, yeah, you would do it, right? Or you would die. Or you would do it. You would do it. Of course you would do it. You would do it. I promise you. People get put through absolute hell and then they survive and they're like, I don't know how I did it. You just do it, you know, because you're going to die otherwise. You're just going to, you don't even like think about it. You're like, I'm dying. So it's instinct. You know, you're not going to let yourself die. And then you're going to use everything you have at your power not to let yourself die. And if you don't do it properly, you die. Right? Which happens to a lot of people. These guys didn't.
themselves to some of the food and drink they'd found, including...
Would it be better to have died? Yeah, probably.
...several pieces of chocolate.
Because there's something like PTSD from this is going to follow them the rest of their life.
And some mouldy sandwiches. They washed it all down with a few fingers of rum mixed with sugar and toothpaste.
Ew.
It was one of the best meals any of them had ever tasted. The following morning, they again set off due east. They walked for most of the day, but there was still no sign of the valley curving back on itself. And until it did, they were hiking deeper into the mountains, away from civilization. That night, they were forced to camp out in the open. It was calm and clear, the conditions as good as they could have ever hoped for, and it still nearly killed them. They spent the night huddled together, slapping and punching each other whenever it looked like someone might nod off. The conditions may have been good, at least relatively speaking, but they were still
precious
3,000
memories, yep.
meters up a snow-covered mountain, and they worried that to fall asleep was to risk never waking up again. Having just about survived the night, the next morning they quickly decided to cut their losses and hike back to the others. There was still no sign of the valley bending around to the west, and besides, the discovery of the tail had changed everything. The Fairchild spare batteries had been just where Carlos Roque had promised, and that meant the increasingly impossible operation Get the Hell Out of Here could be put on hold for a bit, whilst they tried to get the plane's radio working. The batteries were too heavy to lug back to the main camp, even with the help of their Samsonite sled, so the survivors decided to disconnect the radio from the Fairchild's cockpit and take it down to the tail instead. But the whole thing proved a hell of a lot more complicated than any of them had guessed. For starters, the radio was wired into the console inside the cockpit, the same console that was still half buried in the pilot's frozen chest. It also wasn't entirely clear which of the maze of wires and electronics belonged to the radio, and which belonged to various other systems. Roy Harley was put in charge of the operation, and eventually he got what seemed to be the radio out of the cockpit. Unfortunately, the device was split into 2 distinct parts, and he had no idea how to connect the more than 60 wires dangling off them. Nonetheless, accompanied by the expedition team of Parado, Canessa and Tintin, Roy set off for the tail to try and figure it out. It was extremely slow going. Without any instructions to work from, it was almost entirely trial and error. And every now and then, Roy would have his eyebrows singed off when a false connection threw off a shower of sparks. Back at the main camp, the rest of the survivors were having problems of their own. Having already stripped the bodies of those who died in the avalanche, they were starting to run alarmingly low on food. The good news, if you could call it good, was that there were
a group of Hispanics can get a radio working in anything. I'm hopeful.
The bad news was that nobody could remember where
I
the hell they were. In the days after the accident, not in their wildest nightmares had anyone guessed they would soon be eating each other. So those who died in the crash had been buried haphazardly around the plain. But the avalanche had dumped a few extra meters of snow across the entire valley, and nobody was sure where the graves had been. Finding these bodies in particular was especially important for a somewhat gory reason. The unfortunate souls who died in the crash would have been healthy right up to the last second. That meant their bodies would provide significantly more meat. So, how do you find a dead body under several meters of snow when you don't have any tools?
They're still fat. They're still fat. And you can use fat for a lot of things, you know. You eat fat too.
And you aren't sure where to dig? As always, the endlessly inventive survivors came up with a creative solution. They dug narrow prospecting shafts in the snow by weeing in the same spot until they hit either a body or the solid ice of the glacier. The method was effective, but since all there was to drink was sun-melted snow, it was slow going.
All right, Farrell, 26. Let's see if she can try her luck on this. I don't know what you would possibly have me say or sing. Is it In the Arms of an Angel? It's 22. So, but thank you.
And the situation was beginning to get desperate. At first, the survivors had been relatively selective about their food, eating only easily accessible muscle and fat tissues. But as the rations began to dwindle, they were forced to be significantly less picky. They ate internal organs and the meager scraps of flesh scraped from hands and feet. They squeezed the gunk out of intestines and sliced up what was left. They cracked bones to get at the marrow. They even ate the brains. By this point, cannibalism had become so commonplace, the survivors started using human bones as utensils.
Damn.
A few even
repurposed
carved skulls as bowls.
I said damn a lot during this show, and it's just like, damn. Damn. The human socks was like pretty far. Now you're eating brains and stuff like that? I was joking about the guy eating dick, but you know they ate the dick. You know they ate the dick. They're like, it's just meat. It's dick. It's dick meat. You're eating dick meat. Yeah. I'm eating brains too. Wearing socks made out of some other guy's feet.
Brewing broths and soups. You're probably starting to get a sense.
What's it matter, man? I'm gonna eat some dick. Whatever.
Of how that first picture came to be.
This is the Sulk stream, Farrell. Of course, it's uplifting. It is though, right? Because like, you know, a bunch of people whine about like how shitty their lives are, but I guarantee you, if they were put in this situation, they would fight to the death to survive. They would fight to survive. So like, how bad is your life really? You know, people are like, I can't take it anymore, and they jump off buildings and stuff. But if they're in the same situation, they're like, you know what? I'm gonna try to live. I'm gonna try to live. It's weird. People are weird, man.
At first, it's hard to get your head around a group of boys smiling beside the...
And you complain about the stuff I send? I don't complain about the stuff you send in. I complain about the fact that it gets me copyright strikes. Otherwise, it's fine. I mean, fine is a relative term, but like, it's the copyright strikes that are the issue.
Final column of one of their friends. But by then, they knew their friends were gone. What was left was just food. Not everyone was able to stomach it. Numa Tokati in particular never quite got over his revulsion. When he'd been on the expedition team, he'd managed to force down his meat ration for the good of the group. He knew he'd need all the strength he could get to make it out of the mountains and fetch help. But now with his injury continuing to trouble him, he refused to eat anything at all, And with every day passing, he was getting weaker. Down at the tail, things were equally desperate, though for different reasons. Despite several days of solid work on the radio, Roy Harley had made the sum total of no progress whatsoever. He had no way of knowing it, but the truth is, he was wasting his time. The Fairchild radio ran on 115 volt AC power, but the batteries were only able to supply 24 volt DC power. Roy had been destined to fail from the very start. After 8 fruitless and frustrating days, he finally gave up, and Operation Radio for Help was officially mothballed. But it hadn't been a complete
They're still out here.
During the week or so they'd spent living in the tail cone, the expedition team had had plenty of time to poke around a bit. And Tintin had made a discovery that would ultimately change the course of this entire...
You know what I would have done with those batteries is like tried to fashion some sort of heater. There's enough copper wire around. If it's thin enough, it'll, you know, the resistance will actually heat the wire up, and then you can have some sort of heating device. It won't last forever, but it's something.
Entire story.
It's
the
something.
tail contained the Fairchild's heating system. Now, a little bit of central heating would have been lovely, but just like the radio, unpowered, the heating system was useless. But it wasn't the system itself that interested Tintin. It was the copious quantity of insulation it was wrapped in. Thin, strong, and light. It had given him an idea. The biggest challenge they'd faced so far on every single expedition was how to navigate the nights. The days were brutally hard, but just about doable. The nights, they were completely deadly. If they were ever going to escape the mountains, they needed a more reliable way of surviving when the sun went down. And that's where the heating insulation came in. Using more copper wire salvaged from the cockpit as thread, the survivors began painstakingly stitching the insulation into a giant sack, just big enough for 3 people to huddle inside. In what was proving to be the hardest survival RPG ever conceived, this crude sleeping bag was the last piece of gear they needed to face the final boss. With it, they were ready for one last assault on the mountains. It was time to get the hell out of there. Drawing on all their experience from the previous expeditions,
let's do it.
They prepared everything down to the smallest detail. They built up a healthy stockpile of freshly cut meat from newly found bodies, packed the warmest clothes and plenty of spare blankets into improvised knapsacks. Sunburn was
there's more than
become
3
a real
people.
issue during the day, so the survivors used makeup salvaged from the dead to protect their skin. Bright red lipstick covered their mouths, and various creams and foundations protected the rest of the face. Under different circumstances, it might have been rather funny, but the boys were long past caring about their appearance. They also packed medicine, sunglasses, seat cushion snowshoes, even the Fairchild's compass salvaged from the cockpit. Nothing went to waste. Everything that could be used was used. By the second week of December, after 2 months in the mountains, they were ready to go. But there was just enough time for one final tragedy before they departed. Numa Tokati had continued to refuse his meat rations over the previous weeks, and hidden beneath his thick beard and baggy clothing, his body had wasted away to almost nothing. Tokati hadn't been on the old Christians rugby team, but he had captained a Montevideo football team called Loyola FC. Before the accident, he'd been an athlete in peak physical condition. But when he died peacefully in his sleep on the 11th of December 1972, he weighed just 25 kilos. After his death, his friends found a
60 pounds, maybe 60 pounds.
Handwritten note clutched in his fist, containing a quote from the Bible. "Greater love hath no man than this, that a man lay down his life for his friends." Just in case anyone had forgotten their pact,
Damn, this is
he
sad.
was giving the others permission to consume what remained of his body. Tokati had been one of the most popular boys in the group, and his death hit everyone extremely hard. It also made them all the more determined to end this hell once and for all. Nando
Pharaoh's making jokes. I like that. It's 55 pounds. Yeah. Okay. So they cut him open, use his liver as a winter hat and colon as gloves. Probably. Yeah. I mean, like, it's at that point. They're like, whatever. We're just going to do it. It doesn't. You're just making a Gundam out of people. Right? You're making a Gundam out of people. It's like when the Power Rangers all... You're just walking in a human suit.
Parado took a pair of tiny red shoes from amongst his belongings. He'd bought them in Mendoza, what seemed like a lifetime ago, as a gift for his baby nephew. One of the shoes he took safely into his pocket, but the other he hung outside the broken Fairchild. Just before they left, Parado looked each of his friends in the eye and told them he'd be back to pick it up soon. With that, he, Canessa, and Tintin set off on what would be their final expedition. Their mission was simple: make it back to civilization or die trying.
They're doing it. They're going to do it. I think they're going to do it.
They left camp on December the 12th, 1972.
Just three guys on each other's shoulders in a skin trench coat. What are they trying to... They trying to sneak in somewhere? It's not... No. But they are wearing other people's skin. Oh my god, dude.
Having ruled out the eastern route on the previous expedition, they...
A giant flesh robot. Dude, it doesn't matter what they walked out of this mountain in. The fact that they walked out of this mountain is pretty cool. It'd be like, yo, bro. But like, on top of that, you're wearing the flesh of your homies. That's like, oh, it didn't go good up there, right? What if they were super nonchalant and be like, oh, where you guys been? We were in the mountains. You guys okay?
He once again forged west, straight up the colossal mountain that had towered over them ever since the crash 61 days earlier. More experienced mountaineers, in other words, basically anyone who's ever stepped foot on a mountain, would probably have first hiked north, where the slope was less extreme, then followed the ridge of the mountain towards the west. It was longer, but much less challenging, and a whole lot less dangerous. Instead, Canessa,
they just
Parado,
tackled
and
that
Tintin
bitch.
Opted for the shortest route, straight up the steepest part of the mountain. It wasn't entirely new to them. They tackled about half of it on their first major expedition 7 weeks earlier. But even
7 weeks?
The climb proved to be harder than any of them could ever have imagined. The mountain's upper slopes were almost comically steep, pushing 60 degrees in places. A fall would have meant certain death. To make matters worse, during the heat of the day, the snow started to melt, soaking into their seat-cushioned snowshoes and adding several kilos to every step.
Damn.
Their first night in the sleeping bag was, to put it bluntly, f***ing terrifying. It wasn't the temperature this time. It was well below freezing, but the bag did its job. No, it was that crazy slope. No seasoned mountaineer would ever attempt to get 40 winks on a 40-degree slope. Not without physically anchoring themselves to the mountain first. The risk of falling is much too high. The boys didn't know that, of course, but even if they had, they simply didn't have the gear they needed to set up a safe bed for the night. Canessa would later confess it was the most terrifying night of his entire life. Considering what he'd lived through over the previous 2 months, that's quite the statement. Before setting off, the trio had hoped to complete the climb inside a single day. In reality, it took them 3. The final section was the hardest of all, so steep that walking was impossible. Nando Parado led the way, digging hand and footholds out of the hard-packed snow with a metal pole he'd brought along as a walking stick. It took a monumental effort, borderline supernatural given the circumstances. But on the morning of the 15th of December, 1972, Nando Parado was the first to make it to the top of that colossal mountain. He had no way of knowing it at the time, but he was the first human being ever to set foot on the summit of this 4,600-meter monster. At the time, it didn't even have a name.
Yee.
These days, we know it by the one Nando Parado gave it on that very day. Mount Sella, named for his father, Sella Parado. Having finally reached the top, the boys
Is
were
that what you get to do when you
amazed.
reach to the top? You get to name it? I don't think that's... Okay, sure. Why not, though? Why not?
But their joy
You can have
turned
it.
to despair in an instant. Since the crash, the survivors had been working on the assumption that Chile was just a handful of miles away on the other side of this towering peak. On reaching the summit, the boys had fully expected to see green fields and valleys stretching out before them, perhaps even a town or 2. Instead, almost as
More
far
mountains.
as the eye could
More
see,
mountains.
there was just more mountains.
Shit.
And that could only mean one thing. They had not, as they had assumed, crashed right on the edge of the Andes. They were lost somewhere smack in the middle. Now that realization...
Yeah, you
should
got a
have
lot of formal
broken them.
requests, honey.
But, and I feel like I've said this already at least a million times in this video.
Would you like some long pig? Would you like some frozen friend? Is that... Because that's what... Do you want to eat people? Get some people. Is this making you hungry, honey? Is that what it is?
They didn't give up. They took a blow that should have buckled them, and they just got on with it. The most obvious problem they now faced was one of pure logistics. They'd packed enough food for a hike of about a week. At the time, that felt like a conservative estimate, but it clearly wasn't going to be enough. It left them with a bit of a predicament. Well, more of a predicament. Pushing on meant almost certain death by starvation, but going back to camp to supply just wasn't an option either.
Yeah.
Scaling the mountain had drained their already dangerously low energy reserves. Doing it all over again would likely kill them. So, what to do? As always, they fought their way out of trouble. They couldn't forge on, and they couldn't go back. Instead, they did both. Tintin headed back to the Fairchild on his own, leaving Parado and Canessa with his share of the food. Things would still be tight, but if they rationed carefully, they might just make it. It had taken them 3 days to reach the summit of the newly named Mount Sella, but using a seat cushion as a makeshift sled, Tintin made it all the way back to the Fairchild in 45 minutes. It must have been one hell of a ride.
Ripping!
Up on the peak, Nando Parado and Roberto Canessa prepared themselves for the final push. From this point on, there would be no going back.
8
It
is
was
the best
death
number?
or salvation.
Is that what's
There was
going on?
nothing in between.
You just...
As they stood on the top of that desolate
Who
mountain...
gets to keep the cuddle sack? They do. They get... Because the guy sledded down. And, like, God, it takes you 3 days to get to the top, 45 minutes to get down. Jeez, dude.
Staring out at the endless sea of snowy peaks, the 2 young men found themselves holding hands.
They get a... Okay. Not going to make a Brokeback Mountain joke because that would be tasteless. But... Okay. 8 because I can't get Jess a snack. All right. Let's see. Are you going to make me make her a quesadilla? Is that what you're going to do? Okay, I'll make her one anyway. It's 33, but I'll make her one anyway.
Before them was a view
Thank you,
of both
Farrell.
indescribable beauty. and utter despair.
What happened? The third guy
Knesset-
sledded back to the base, right? Because he didn't have enough food, right? So he was like, "You take my food, I'll sled back to the base. 45 minutes. Took him 3 days to get to the top. 45 minutes back down. You guys go on. Give you my food." I mean, the worst should be behind them, right?
Turns to Parado with a smile.
Probably not.
You and I are friends, he said. We've been through so much. Now, let's go die together.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah.
Roberto
Fucking metal.
Canessa was 19 at the time. Nando Parado, 23. Neither believed they would ever see their families or friends again. Yet, they just kept on going. Getting down the other side of the mountain was only marginally easier than climbing it had been. The snow was extremely slippery and the going was slow. At one point, Parado tried to speed things up a bit by sliding down a narrow gully on his bum. But within seconds, he was completely out of control.
Yeah.
By his own estimations, he hit a top speed of about 60 miles an hour
Oh,
before
shit.
smashing into a snowdrift. After that, they just walked. Before long...
No, but I mean, like, imagine how much time you saved doing that. I mean, if you're hitting 60 miles an hour, you're covering ground. You're covering
Snow
ground.
for the first time in almost 2.5 months. Symbolically, it was a huge moment. But the change of scenery came with a new set of problems. Instead of somewhat predictable snow underfoot, Parado and Canessa had to negotiate huge boulder fields packed with loose and crumbling rocks. Every footstep was a potential death sentence. In their weakened state, a sprained ankle or
No.
broken
Yeah,
bone from a
you think you would like toboggan on down on your dead friends, right? But no, they ate them all. So they ate their own toboggans. So it's either food or sledding.
fall would have probably
life,
been game
you know.
over.
It's life.
There was also a problem with their food. Without the snow to keep things cool, their precious meat began to rot. They were
Eat it
already
anyway.
severely malnourished. If their food became inedible before they found help, they would surely die. Eventually, they made their way down into a huge glacial valley. A mountain stream flowed through the middle, running roughly westwards. So the boys followed it for mile after punishing mile. It took more than a week of hard hiking before they saw the first tentative signs of human activity. A rusty old tin can. And more encouragingly, a herd of cows.
Oh, I would.
It was proof that other
I would murder a cow, dude. I would get a rock and I just bash a cow's head.
humans had been here. But time was running out. Most of the food was gone, and what remained was rotten.
Cows.
There aren't many things in life more horrific than eating human flesh, I think, but I'm guessing eating rotten human flesh is probably one of them. Both Parado and Canessa were struggling badly, but Canessa in particular had grown alarmingly weak. Every step was a struggle, every breath a laboured wheeze. It was only sheer force of will that kept them moving one day to the next. And then, all of a sudden, it was over. Well, almost. On the 9th day after leaving camp, Canessa was lying exhausted in the dust when he glanced up and saw 3 men on horseback staring right at him
Oh my god.
from the other side of the river. He tried to stand up and call for help, but the very last of his strength had left him. He was literally too weak even to get to his feet. Luckily, Parado was nearby, but what was supposed to be their glorious salvation didn't quite go according to plan. By this point, the babbling mountain stream they'd been following had morphed into a raging torrent of white water. It was so loud that communication with the strangers proved impossible, and after several minutes of fruitless gesturing and shouting, the horsemen rode off. With
Well,
little
they're
else
coming
to do,
back.
Parado and Canessa settled down to wait and to pray. The following morning, the 10th since they'd left camp, they woke to find the horsemen had returned. Seeing that the boys were awake, one of the riders lobbed a large stone across the river. Attached to it was a piece of paper and a pencil. Parado grabbed both and hastily scribbled down a note. This is what it said. I come from an airplane that crashed in the mountains. I am Uruguayan. We have been walking for 10 days. I have a wounded friend up there. In the plane, there are still 14 injured people. We need to get out of here quickly, and we don't know how to. We don't have any food. We are very weak. When are you going to come get us? Please, we can't even walk. Where are we? The horse riders had heard all about the missing plane months earlier. It seemed unbelievable that these two emaciated young men could be survivors. But then again, where else could they have come from? This isn't a part of the world where you get many unexpected visitors, and whoever these boys were, it was clear they'd been through hell. The men agreed to help. They sent a rider to pick Parado and Canessa up and take them to a tiny shack where they were given food and water.
Jeez,
it was the first thing that can't be found on a standard issue human corpse that either of them had eaten in almost 2 months.
Yeah.
It's hard to overstate just how close this story
Uruguayan. Ugh.
we came to having a very different ending. The 10-day hike out of the mountains had taken every last ounce of strength Nando Parado and Roberto Canessa possessed.
Jeez, man.
At the time of their rescue,
I was saying G's and damn, but like, this is a good story.
Canessa was essentially paralyzed from exhaustion. Nando would later estimate that his friend was just a single day from death when they were found. Had things played out just a little bit differently, they would have died out there alone in the wilderness, and their friends up in the mountains would never have been found, or at least not alive. Thankfully, things didn't play out differently. Nando and Canessa found help just in time. And within 24 hours, the Chilean authorities had dispatched 3 helicopters to find the others. Neither Nando Parado nor Roberto Canessa could confidently point to the crash site on a map. So, despite his newfound and very understandable fear of flying, Nando agreed to guide the helicopters in person. He was able to direct the pilot back through the valleys he'd walked with Canessa without too much trouble, and soon they reached the base of Mount Sella. When Parado gave the next direction, straight up, at first the pilot just shook his head. There was no way 2 emaciated young men with none of the gear and no idea could possibly have come over that mountain. But Parado was insistent, and eventually the pilot pulled the helicopter into a steep climb. It was not a smooth journey. The air up there is so thin and the wind so strong that the pilots physically couldn't get the helicopter over the summit. They had to
It's
abort
happening
the first
again.
attempt altogether and approach the valley from a different angle. Second time around, though, they successfully made it over the top. But the change of direction had left Parado a little turned around. The snow-covered valley below was vast and apparently empty. He was just about beginning to doubt himself when he spotted the rock formation he recognized. And shortly after that, the helicopters were circling the Fairchild. I can't even begin to imagine the range of emotions the survivors on the ground must have experienced.
Yeah, they do. They
after
love
choppers
throwing people
came
from
into
helicopters.
land. Even if I could, I'm pretty sure it would
Bunch
be
of
beyond the
weak-ass
power of mere
Argentinians.
words to describe.
I mean, that's inspiring. That's an inspiring story.
There were 45 people on board Flight 571 when it took off from Mendoza Airport, bound for Santiago, on the 12th of October 1972.
Well, I mean, luckily they got this picture. Hey, let's all get a picture before we get on this doomed airplane. Again, damn!
Just 16 people were still alive 72 days later when the rescue mission was completed.
Damn!
Those survivors were flown to a hospital in central Santiago. Disbelieving parents began to arrive to see the children most of them had spent the previous weeks mourning. These reunions were moments of pure, unfiltered joy. But it was only a matter of time before the survivors would have to talk about exactly what happened up there in the mountains. It was an impossibly difficult situation. Incredible as the rescue had been, the recovery of the survivors wasn't solely cause for celebration. It was also final confirmation that 29 people were dead. That was world-ending news, but things got a whole lot harder for the families involved when they discovered their loved ones' bodies had been eaten to ensure the survival of the rest. And just as everyone was trying to come to terms with the brutal reality, the newspapers got involved. That 16 people had survived the plane crash and more than 2 months stranded in the mountains was already big news. But when Chilean newspaper El Mercurio printed a picture of a half-eaten human leg propped up against the side of the Fairchild on its front page, it caused a global sensation. A huge public backlash followed. Things got so bad that the survivors were forced to hold a news conference to tell their side of the story. It took place in Montevideo on December the 28th, just 5 days after the rescue. At first, the survivors weren't sure how to breach the subject. Some people wanted to talk frankly about what had happened. Others wanted to gloss over some of the gorier details. In the end, they opted for simple honesty. The decision could easily have backfired, but the response was overwhelmingly positive. The news conference ended with a standing ovation from the assembled journalists. And not long afterwards, Pope John Paul VI sent a telegram absolving the survivors of any guilt for their actions. Perhaps the most amazing reaction of all came from the parents of the children who didn't make it out of the mountains. Despite everything that had happened, almost without exception, they were united in their support of the survivors. Several went so far as to express their gratitude that, even in death, their children had helped to ensure the survival of the rest.
Damn!
It's more than 50 years since Flight 571 was lost in the Andes. Each year, on December the 22nd, the survivors of that terrible tragedy get together to mark the anniversary of their rescue. Nando Parrado describes the date as their shared birthday. The day each of them was reborn against all odds. I've covered hundreds of stories on this.
They're white dudes.
They're
white guys.
Very modest. The miracle of the Andes is a shining example of us at our best. It's a story of resilience, belief, friendship, and determination. More than anything, it's a story of sheer, indomitable will. I truly hope you enjoyed it, and thanks for watching.
Damn! That's all I have to say about it. Thanks for watching, guys. Sorry I was feeling a little bit ill. I couldn't do my typical screaming, but I think that was a good video. And we got to enjoy it together. So, you can put up with more than you think you can. That's what you should take from that. Anyways, I'll probably see you guys tomorrow. I hope I'm feeling a bit better. Until then, I hope you guys get out there, make me proud, and do all of those great stuff, and drink a lot of water, and get a good night's sleep, and take care of yourselves, because I care about you too. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Love you. Good night.
I'm an incredible soul, unhinged and enraged like a bulldog's fierce growl. I'm spitting fire, burning through these trees, questioning the world, unraveling conspiracies. Talking about Bigfoot, but I guess monster too. Government lies, they're feeding me their goo. I'm diving deep into this rabbit hole, uncovering the truth, setting fire to their control. I got small nipples, but my voice is loud, born like thunder in this crazy crowd. They say I'm crazy, but I call it woke. I'm Unraveling the madness with every word I spoke.